Welcome, everyone, and thank you all for coming out to our third Thursday reading series. My name is Francesca Bell, and I'm in charge of events. Actually, today, this marks my 1-year anniversary. I just realized that. Thank you all for tolerating me for a year. You've lasted longer than some. So as you all know, Brian Turner was scheduled to read tonight, and I just wanted to say that he offered his apologies. He had to cancel. I feel I can say this publicly because he's actually written about it publicly. His wife is suffering from cancer, and so he was unable to come tonight because of her treatment schedule. And so I was really, really nervous about what to do, and I just want to thank Molly Fisk so much and George Higgins for agreeing to come with short notice. And I am so excited to hear them read that I feel sad about Brian and his wife, but I don't feel sad about the reading anymore. So I have a couple of announcements and a reminder tonight before we get started. And so the reminder is that all of the journals that are in the dining room are free to good homes. Please take as many as you can. Load up your car with them, because I don't want them anymore. And they're beautiful. It's just, you can only read them 1 or 2 times maybe. And then our first announcement is actually, it's not a program that's affiliated with the Poetry Center, but one of our members, she often coordinates events for Annie Finch. Annie Finch is going to be coming to San Rafael to give a workshop. There are just 4 spots left. It's on Saturday, February 20th, and there are flyers about it in the back. And the other announcement is that our anthology is open for submissions. And the submissions will be open until March 16th, and the theme this year is water. And we're very, very proud of our anthology. It just is, it's beautiful every year, and we actually even make pushcart prize nominations from the anthology. And so I hope that everyone will consider sending their poems in. You do have to be a member, and you have to have paid your dues, your membership dues for the year. And we happen to have forms for that in the back also. You can see Barbara if you haven't paid your membership yet. And so now we're going to get right down to some poetry, what we all came out for. So Molly Fisk is going to go first, and she is the author of 2 books of radio commentary, Blow Drying a Chicken, Observations from a Working Poet, and Using Your Turn Signal Promotes World Peace, More Observations from a Working Poet. Her poetry collections include The More Difficult Beauty, Listening to Winter, Terrain, which she wrote with Dan Bellum and Forrest Hamer, and Saltwater Poems. She has been awarded grants by the National Endowment for the Arts, the California Arts Council, the Marin Arts Council, and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and she has been nominated for the position of Poet Laureate of California. She was raised in San Francisco and Mill Valley. She learned to write in Stinson Beach, and she served on the board of the Marin Poetry Center from 1992 to 1996. We're coming to my favorite part. She is currently the Poet Laureate of community radio station KVMR in Nevada City, where she lives, and Hell's Backbone Grill in Boulder, Utah. She works as a life coach in the Skills for Change tradition, teaches writing, and owns Poetry Boot Camp. Please welcome Molly Fisk.
Have you been to Hell's Backbone Grill?
No.
Boulder, Utah has a population of about 150 people. It's the last city in the country that had its mail delivered by mule. And it is predictably Mormon, being in Utah. And the 2 women who took over this sort of derelict restaurant and turned it into Hell's Backbone Grill were practicing Buddhists. Whoa. See, someone is listening and has an opinion. Anyway, there's a wonderful book called A Measure of Grace that they wrote about the process of moving to this place, not being able to hire anyone because they didn't want this the population didn't want their kids working for these strangers. And now they have monks come and play soccer once a year, and they have an ice cream social, and they teach all their staff how to do wine sniffings because they can't drink, but they need to give advice to their patrons. So they've done a fabulous job. The person who dragged me into this building for the first time is Jackie Cudler. And she made me run the high school contest for years and years, forced me against my will, for which I'm very grateful. And I taught also for 5 or 6 years at Juvie with Kathy Evans, with California Poets in the Schools. And I met George Higgins in the 90s at the Community of Writers at Squaw Valley. So that's why we are appearing here together. We know each other from before. And thank you very much for letting me pinch hit for Brian Turner, whom I think is an amazing poet. Take a deep breath. Take 2. What the hell? It's very funny to be back here. It's such a beautiful building. My heart, that meadowlark, that traveler, that uncut sapphire in the bucket a Brazilian miner carries on his back out into fading daylight. That intricate knot, that truss, that explanation for failure, that harmonica solo moaning through a bar's open door, that revolving gleam from Alcatraz night after night, that nickel buried in last week's filthy snow piled at the edge of a parking lot, scrim between stage and backdrop, dictionaries next to last page, that breath in the mouth of a baritone, the mouth opening, the first note, a simple equation, a billowing sail, that lace at the edge of a petticoat, that splintered dock by the boathouse where you're cutting your engine, where you're aiming your bow. This is after a poem also called My Heart by Kim Adenizio. And in the tradition of painters learning to paint by copying other people's paintings, for a long time I would take a line or a title or an idea of somebody else's and do it myself, sort of practice trying to figure out how they had done it. Memorizing poems teaches you a huge amount about how something works. So I recommend everybody do that all the time. Nobody ever does it when I say this. But. I was brought up in San Francisco and didn't start writing till I was 35 and was living after a long time back east in Stinson Beach. And all sorts of things I had done long before I started writing again came back to me and showed up in poems. It was really fun. This is called The Names of Streets Instead of Streets, which is a line from Dan Bellum's poem, Dell Avenue. When, in Oslo, I skied down the main street, pushing off against the white rim of the world, gliding past the train station and the famous nude statues, I spoke a language of my own, the Gammelnorsk Margit taught me from before the war, mixed with a little Grisprat I learned in Vogo. I got along, but there is something about living in a language you don't own that teaches you the first steps of dying. Without the slanted American puns and dumb jokes, nothing special, just what anyone would know. I was diminished, I was not myself, and I carry it, mixed in with cold nights and lilting vowels, chilled breath from the other side of heaven, I will always belong to the Spanish names of California, but I liked the pushed forwardness of that Arctic speech, the precarious ring of those L's against the top of my teeth, suspended like icicles. Jeg elsker deg, I love you. Du elsker meg, you love me. Velkommen til Norge. And the way you have to almost smile to get the E right, hardly opening your mouth, since at that latitude, even the language, where did I go? Since at that latitude, everything, even the language, is based on trying to stay warm. I was someone in Norwegian, but I don't know who. And when a Viking wrapped me in his sweatered arms against the wind and called my name into the northern sky, I couldn't help it. Under my breath, I said, San Francisco. I said, Divisadero. I said, Anza, Balboa, Cabrillo. Hunter's Moon. Early December, dusk, and the sky slips down the rungs of its blue ladder into indigo. A late quarter moon hangs above the ridge like a broken plate and shines on us all. On the new deputy, almost asleep in his 4x4, lulled by the crackling song of the dispatcher. On the bartender, slowly wiping a glass and racking it, one eye checking the game. It shines down on the fox's red and gray life as he stills, a shadow beside someone's gate, listening to winter. Its pale gaze caresses the lovers, curled together under a quilt, dreaming alone, and shines on the scattered ashes of terrible fires, on the owl's black flight, on the whelks, on the murmuring kelp, on the whale that washed up 6 weeks ago at the base of the dunes, and it shines on the backhoe that buried her. And it shone on the other backhoe they had to bring in because the first backhoe fell into the hole on top of the whale. And Sam Fisk, my brother over there on the sofa, was there in the house where I was living, and we saw this thing coming towards the shore. We were up on the hill above Stinson looking way out, and there was this thing that wasn't a sail, and it wasn't a boat, and it was weird. And then we got down to the shore, because of course we ran down to the beach, and it was the stomach of the whale that had ballooned with its gases and then was beginning to smell really horrible. And the only people that touched that whale were the poets and the kids. It was really funny. All right. I know a lot of you, and I know that I should know a lot of you, but I haven't recognized you quite yet. I know some of you have taken Poetry Boot Camp, which is this thing I do online, .com, if you need to know more about it. But this poem is for Martin. It's called The Faithful. Sometime during the night I woke, convinced the familiar W of Cassiopeia overhead was merely a random cluster of stars, and morning was near, though the clock said 1:46, and the sky was dark as it gets inside a coat sleeve in November, when you're poking around, trying to find your scarf and gloves. Smoke hangs over us during the day, the sun a bleary eye, then melts at dusk back to the valley. 14 California fires are half contained, but rowdy. They jump the lines as soon as heads are turned. Thus is the summer of our discontent made ignominious winter, and we close our bedroom windows, coughing. We're the lucky ones. It's not our own houses burning. And we knew all along global warming was coming. We're the offspring of socialists, communists, and skeptics, the ones who, from the very first, believed. Rogue Hometown Sonnet. Some people call these American sonnets, but what they are is the regular form of a sonnet with no rhyming, no scansion. It's just 14 lines. And that seemed rude to call them American sonnets. And Camille Dungy calls them rogue sonnets, so I just stole that from her. Say you live in a town whose steep main street descends 5 blocks to a mild-mannered creek. In 1960, they built a freeway right beside it. A Victorian town. You pass the bastard Deco City Hall on your way to breakfast. Say you won't duck into the mine shaft at 8 a.m. for makers with a beer back. You haven't sunk that low, but you ache for a shot in your first cup of coffee. Say the woman whose breasts you sucked last night is on the wrong side of 40. Say you've only been divorced twice. The boys still call, but much less often. Maybe the recurring dream of soft boards planed beneath your hand, the falling shavings. Maybe that new waitress at Ike's. It was a mining town. Off the main street, everything stops. Tourists just don't go there. This time of year, kids pile in from anywhere else, looking for trim work, spending their cash on California fusion cuisine, whatever that is, at the end of the night, swinging their dreadlocks. Fine, if it turns you on. Say your bathroom mirror has a full-length diagonal crack. You don't take it personal. You still have your health. Razor, shaving cream, toothbrush, aspirin. Even if glaciers melt and shorelines rise, the ocean won't get this far. Us will die by fire. Tomorrow night's another ball game. Say, oh, never mind. Don't say it. Dark rum and tonic. Sometimes what you need is a roadhouse, blast of laughter and warm air pouring out the door, where the waitresses know your name but the customers don't. Shrill on the 3rd martini or 5th blue ribbon, steaks searing on a huge propane-fired grill. 2 birthday parties in full swing, mylar balloons leashed to a chairback, slowly turning. Tonight you're a few years shy the median age, at your back wall table drinking iced tea, because you don't spend time with the person you turn into after a frosted glass. Chardonnay, dark rum and tonic. You remember her well, that girl, that woman, with great compassion. Her loneliness behind the amber liquid disappeared, or seemed to. She got funny and affectionate, softer, sexually daring, but not a femme fatale. Always more honey than darling, her courage long gone by morning, that terrible waking into a stranger's sheets. You don't miss any of it. Headaches, longing that's miles easier to bear when sober, wishing a friend would come along and love you, even though you're just getting older. Some nights you need a roadhouse, boisterous laughter and warm air pouring through open doors. The kind of place where your choice is simple, well done, bloody, or medium rare, and no one gives a shit that you're by yourself, writing in a notebook. Nobody turns to stare. That's called the Willow if you ever need a steak when you're up in my town. W-I-L-L-O. And the salad is just iceberg lettuce chopped up. Exactly. It's wasteful. Morning dance. Watching the man with beautiful shoulders load the back of his truck, I think how obvious and secret human loveliness is. So abundant we can ignore an elegant feature, as if it were everywhere, dime a dozen, the precise angle vein crosses knuckle on someone's articulated hand. The young Cambodian donut man lifts a silver tray above his head in one swoop, turning first at the waist, letting hips and knees follow, a gesture to make Degas happy. And how this barista swings from sink to counter, tapping the squat pitcher twice to settle its thick espresso, her elbow rising slightly as she pours the foaming milk. Grace never lets us go. Even the kid writing love poems in the corner to someone who doesn't know his name. How perfectly balanced the weight of his head in his hands. I have a friend who doesn't really think poetry is like happening. And I don't just read poetry, I read radio essays about being a poet. But anyway, the other day we were having lunch and she said something like, "Oh, you and your poetry porn voice." And I just thought, that could go right on my tombstone, write that. She had a poetry porn voice. As if those two words have even ever met before. Persimmon, pomegranate, pistachio. Poetry, porn, persimmon, pomegranate, pistachio. I hadn't thought of that, but there it is. My real name is watermelon, lying at the end of its thick vine in the sun. My name is sweet pink flesh with black seeds you spit off the back deck in August. All summer long, my name is fresh corn and bluefish pâté. My name is lemonade with ice. When my best friend's doll died, we biked to the Menemsha Wharf for lemon bars and buried her up above the tide line in hot sand. No coffin or cremation, a gritty goodbye, some unshed tears, and 60 years later, the memory of everything we ever were rising and falling. My maiden name was cauliflower soup and warm buttered sourdough eaten in a snowstorm. But that was long ago when words meant other things. Now call me the cascading pings rigging makes hitting the aluminum masts of boats rocking at anchor. Sunset, Stinson. So I learned how to write when I was living in Stinson. I wrote, I had no idea. I didn't know any poets. I didn't want to know any poets. I have a sister and a brother here. Our mother, when she would get upset, would start reading Robert Frost. And most of us would leave the house because we did not want to be there when she was reading Robert Frost. But as things transpired, somebody gave me a poem. I had a fight with a friend in Cambridge, and she gave me Mary Oliver's Wild Geese. This is in 1987. So Dreamwork was out, but an American Primitive, but not the new and selected yet. And I liked the poem a lot. It was the first poem I'd ever read that made any sense to me, that wasn't, okay, Yeats and Keats and everybody, but really. Even Plath and Sexton was sort of like beyond me. But Mary Oliver was like, this is what's going on. I see you, blah, blah, blah. So I put it up on my refrigerator, which is what you do with poems. Mm-hmm. And my mother came to town and saw that and wanted a copy. And she brought it back to her house and put it on her refrigerator. And then for my birthday that year, she gave me American Primitive. But I was mad at her, so I didn't read it. And then I moved from Cambridge to California, very close to my mother's house, and still didn't read it. But I was unpacking one day and I came across it, and I did read it, and I read it from start to finish, and thought, where have I been, And also thought, I could do that, which is not true. Nobody else can do that. But if you're going to be young and dumb, you might as well, have a conviction. So I got up and wrote a poem and put it on my refrigerator. And then because everyone in Stinson Beach is really a PhD in English, even though they are doing your plumbing, the plumber came over to fix the kitchen sink and looked at the refrigerator and said, "Who wrote that?" And I said, "I did." And he said, "That's not so bad. You should keep going." And so I did. So I wrote and wrote and wrote. And then I took, in typical fashion, a class that was not from a poet. It was from Anne Lamott in a church basement in Tiburon. Because far be it from me to go directly towards what I want. And at that class, it was a week-long class, I met a bunch of people I still work with today as writing friends. And everybody there said, "Have you ever heard of Dorianne Locks?" And I said, "No." And then it turned out Dorianne was just beginning to teach in her own house. So for many, many, many Tuesday nights, 4 years of Tuesday nights, I drove from Stinson to Petaluma the back way on Tuesdays to go have a class with her. That's how I learned how to write. Plus, walking on the beach. Sunset, Stinson. Especially the way thin layers of water slide up the sand and take on the color of endings, silver or pewter, never ocean blue, and then recede into just a little spent foam or a half-hearted undertow according to the tide, and then again slide up, scattering the quick feet of godwits and willets, their curved bills plunging as the water slips down toward itself easily and is taken in. So this was my first book. You can tell because I'm on the back. This is my second book. I'm also on the back, older, fatter, but still happy. And then I'm reading you pieces of paper from the forthcoming book, which no one has offered to publish yet, but I'm still calling it a book. And its title is Salt from Another Mouth. But before we go back to that, here is something called American Riddle, which I'm reading because my sister likes it.
But I didn't even have to ask.
No, you never have to ask. American Riddle. We'll just say this is for Brian Turner also. When you can't figure out how to stop the war in Iraq, much less how to make enough money to pay your mortgage, moving the $180 from savings back into your checking account as if that will help. When it's all you can do to acknowledge the actual world and not lose yourself half the afternoon in People magazine, where the movie stars twirl like frosted cakes in a glass case at the Old Lady Baltimore Bakery on Throckmorton, before your hometown became so chic none of the kids from your high school could afford to live there. When you're so tired of reinventing yourself, you want to lie down on the road, right on the double yellow line in front of your driveway, exactly where 2 of your cats have been killed, and wait for someone to run you over. But with your luck, you'd probably just lose an arm, no doubt the right one, so you'd have to relearn holding the pencil against the page at the proper angle. And your sweater sleeves would need to be hemmed to cover the stump. And then you'd really have something to complain about. As well as something in common with soldiers back from the Middle East, who left a precious part of themselves behind, which is where this poem begins and ends. How the hell are we going to stop the cavalier waste? How are we going to apologize? I was talking to George earlier about form. Give that girl a hug. I didn't know it'd make you cry. Oh no. I was talking to George about form in the other room and how how I don't like it. I don't use it much. But I once worked with the poet Molly Peacock and had her look at a book of mine, manuscript in process. And she's a great fan of using form because if your brain is thinking about the format of the form, it will let go a little bit of the rest of your brain, which can go over in this direction and say things you haven't wanted to say or don't know you know. And so there's a way that tightening the form gives you more freedom in a paradoxical way. And so I write these sonnets that are 14 lines long and have no other form attached to them. But I also got very interested as I was working with Molly in syllabics, and that was something she suggested to me that's changed a lot of my writing, I think, because I just became much more interested in the container and the thing to be contained and using that back and forth and back and forth. And it got me to write things I had no idea I was even thinking about, like this poem, Washington Square, New York, 1941, which won me $1,000, which is about $47 a word. When Edward Hopper finishes his painting for the night, sets the boar bristles to soak in turpentine, wipes the thick, not yet crusted over drips from his smock with a blue rag, and tips his palette up to incubate tomorrow's luck, he isn't thinking of the greenish light from a street lamp, how it hits plate glass and fractures through it, or the counter's corner in an all-night city diner. Most of the time, he's just hungry, already smelling the stew his wife likes to make from white beans and bacon. His eyes lose focus, and his other senses, so long ignored in deference to saturated color, come alive, more vivid now because of their confinement. How clear the little click as the lamp's wick sinks below its silver mouth, scritch of boot heels on the tile stair when he descends. He inhales the evening, the butcher's bloody work, stale malt that drifts from a window. The snowy world receives him. Flakes melt and run down his cheeks. The history lesson. As you undress for him, pull the mother-of-pearl circles one at a time from their bound holes, slowly enough that he can hear the diver splash in a distant ocean. Begin to remove the slippery layers of spun yarn, flax whose fibers were threshed and beaten, soaked in long summer days, until they softened and became pliable, bowing to warp and weft. Don't rush. Let him feel the heat on his back. Slip off this delicate silk that carries the rocking rhythm of wheels and slap of wind in a sail in its memory. Not salt, but the shadow of salt. Not seabird's cry, but its echo. Don't speak. He'll understand, or he won't, how the living world has given itself to this moment. Cochineal of beetles' wings, onion skin gold, indigo secreted by ants, darkening the dye bath. Cleopatra wore these clothes, Eurydice and Helen. They were always made by women, deft with shuttle and loom, retting, knitting, stitching, tatting, spinning miracles light as air out of nothing, to cover clavicles and nipples, the smalls of backs, the fierce thighs, embellishing dreams with gold thread and moonbeam. So now, as you drop the last shred and stand before him, he's every man, and you are every woman who ever lived. It wouldn't be me if I let you have that sexy poem all by itself. This is called Sex. No one tells you how funny it is, the awkwardness of two bodies, various smackings and thumpings, a leg angled this way, an elbow that, the scrambling and sliding, all while you're trying to be cool, suave, romantic, in love. And the noises, like reruns of Flipper or Jacques Cousteau. Gurgles and slurpings, moans cut off mid-note, as if a whale song was put on mute. And then the dreaded, untimely vaginal fart. Oh, darling, ooh, punctuated by yelps of pain as fingernails scrawl up the lats, or an eager knee clamps escaped tresses against the pillow. SOS isn't the cry we're expecting to utter, but it ain't the movies here, bub, with their languid French kisses, deliberate tangos. Coordination flies out the window, and other things slide from their welcome place and have to somehow be reintroduced. Forget faking coming. It's all I can do to keep a straight face. I'm so glad you're laughing. We do this reading on Valentine's Day, called Valentine Erotique or something, near my town in a place that's called Out on the Ridge, which is where all the pot growers live and nefarious things happen, and they have mountain lions and stuff. And one of my friends, after going to this 4 or 5 years in a row, she said, "It's so great, there's never a dry seat in the house." So I wrote that poem for them. We have fun even though we're not near any cities. So we lost 2 fabulous poets last week, C.D. Wright, and she died of a blood clot with thrombosis, if you haven't heard what that was about. She'd taken a plane from Chile 2 days before. And then Francisco Alarcón, who died of stomach cancer. And she was 67 and he was 61. And Jackie and I have been talking about this, and she's just looked at me sternly and said, "You have no idea," because she's been going through stuff like this longer than I have. Anyway, this poem is my last poem, and it's for them. Full Dark. Tonight, inside my body, the blood races through veins, passing in its circuit a piece of chicken wire. Calling it something homely gives me all the power over the stent I'm ever going to have. Thus does woman return to Eden and name the world. But tonight I'm not a woman, just a body whose heart's still beating. I could be elk, frog, house cat, spawning salmon, a raptor sailing above its next morsel. I could be the morsel. My friend whose chest was cracked years ago is still astonished that you can't feel anything with your heart. There's no sensation, only the blind clenching and unclenching, a machine. I'll tell you what scares me most, how fast it beats. Tonight the last birds scatter goodbyes across the lawn. The sky's that nearly sherbet color I can't match with paint. Life is full of minor disappointments, failures of skill, failures of wit, of luck. That the heart can't feel a thing is pretty funny, love being only in our minds after all. Tonight the light will drain from air the way it always does, and then the blue hour descend, and then full dark. I'm still as brave as I was before the careful insertion of chicken wire. Not more, not less. Probably like my father and his father, with or without salt, soy, egg yolks, butter, exercise, and wonder. I will live as long as I live, not a moment longer. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. That was wonderful. And now we're going to hear from George Higgins. George Higgins was born in Detroit, Michigan, and he's been a public defender in Oakland for the past 26 years. He received his JD from the University of Michigan Law School, where he studied with Robert Hayden. I'm assuming that wasn't in the law school. And he earned his MFA from Warren Wilson College, where he was a Holden Fellow. His first published poem, May We All Have Been This Fortunate, was selected for Best American Poetry 2003 by Yusuf Komunyakaa. You could have just rested on that laurel right there, but thank goodness you didn't. Other poems have appeared in Fugue, Lungful, Pleiades, and Salamander. George is presently a Cave Canem Fellow. He lives in Oakland with his wife Sharon and his dog Puck. Please welcome George Higgins.
Yeah, move everything up a little bit. I should probably let you do that.
I think that will be okay.
That one's
Darryl.
okay?
You think, John? We'll let John do it.
Crouched over.
You know,
Oops, is this coming?
my mic will pick up your sound.
But this one needs
Okay.
up a little bit.
All right.
There we go.
All right. Wow. Thank you so much for thinking to invite me. It's great to be out here. It's so nice to be reading with Molly, because I think I was just talking to a friend, Robin, who I know, who's here to see me tonight. And I think we met in 1995. It was at Squaw Valley a long time ago. And I had just started writing again after a long time off. I'd been an English major. And in law school, I did study with Robert Hayden. I got a break from law school. They allowed you to take a couple of classes for credit outside of the school. So, but really, as I was establishing myself in my professional career, it took me a long time to get back to writing. So, in any event, it's great to be here. A couple of changes from the bio. I was supposed to get the bio in, and of course I was late, and then there have been a couple of changes. I have now worked for the public defender for 28 years, but I retired a week ago. So I'm in this new world and just trying to figure that out. And also, alas, my dog Puck died. Yes, poor Puck. We had to put him down. But he lived to be almost 17 years old and was our family dog. So, all right, with those changes. So anyway, I thought that what I would do is I would read some poems from this book. And as you look at this cover, this is the 10th floor of the Alameda County Courthouse. I don't know if you've been to Oakland, California at all, but it's the old historic Art Deco courthouse. I think Huey Newton called it Moby Dick, right? It's that big. And this is the 10th floor where there's an interview room. And I spent many a day talking to clients in that room. And this is an old picture. It was a photograph done by Dorothea Lange. She did a series in the 50s on our office. It was like for Life or Look magazine. And the public defender there is a guy named Marin Poetry, who was the public defender and also when I was first starting out trying cases, I tried a case in front of him right before he died. So anyway, I'm going to start out reading these work poems. And I tried to just pick out the poems that were more sort of workaday, and then I'm going to move into a few new poems in a different style. I was talking to Molly, and I do write a lot, or in this book, there are a lot of poems in form, really strict forms. I don't know why. It's sort of like I'm cheating if I don't follow all the rules, you know. So I'm not, in many of these, I'm not rogue at all. I'm just very, I don't know what the opposite of rogue is, but that's me. Keek? Oh, all right. I won't ask anymore. Anyway, this first one is just no particular morning. The angry man whose file I couldn't find, the mother I offended when I didn't talk to her, the man with golden teeth, their grinding sound, the phone's continual squawk, the broken metal hinge, one demented inmate in a holding cell I haven't seen, or someone who forgot exactly when she was supposed to come to court, the meanness of excuse, abuse, and don't forget the knife that stuck inside the tattered screen, the lady who he dragged across the street, the purse he didn't get, the cell she didn't take, the shrimp she stuffed inside her pants, the steak. Notes. The young public defender, feeling slightly dizzy, hands cold, stares at his image in the ridged metal closing on the jail's elevator doors. Had a fight with his wife that morning. Remembered the seamless closing of her angled jaw, repeated now, as was her silence, except now the whirring motors overhead, which last until he reaches his floor and sits on the metal stool between a window and a door and spreads his papers out. The young mulatto in wrist and ankle chains, escorted from below, slumps against the facing door, accordion folder between his fingers. The contents spill as though a sack has been slit, an occluded bag, rounded pencil stubs, crumpled paper, requisition forms. They wait, and when the guards leave, they pick up those things. For the first time, the lawyer really looks at them, the notes on the lined schoolboy paper, written in pencil in a careful hand. The lawyer doesn't need them, but holds them in his arms. So this next poem, I worked at drug court, like mentor diversion in Oakland, and these were folks who had been arrested and charged with selling drugs, usually crack cocaine at that time. And this was a program to try to get them to develop life skills and hopefully eventually get their case dismissed. So one day, as part of this program, I went to the probation department, and packed my iron and ironing board in my minivan and a bunch of Goodwill ties to give them life skills. So anyway, this is a poem about that. It's also connected to Robert Hayden, and it makes reference to a non-rhyming 14-liner rogue sonnet, Frederick Douglass, which you may or may not know. If you don't, it's a great poem. But anyway, reading Hayden's Frederick Douglass to the alleged dealers. Like attaching safety pins on baby diapers, I tie a Windsor knot over the alleged drug dealer's shoulder. The brightly colored Salvation Army ties I bought in bulk before my lecture flutter like big box kites at Cesar Chavez Park around their muscled necks. 12 recently arrested, said to be street dealers, 18 to 21, sit around the conference table at Probation Hall, executives in their orange molded plastic chairs. I try to mentor them by measuring their necks and arms. I teach them how to iron shirts. My auntie showed me how, says one. She flicks the water from a bowl like that, he demonstrates. I use one of them clip-ons, says another boldly. The lady probation officer interrupts. You still need to learn how to tie a tie. When I recite the Hayden poem, they won't look up. The Tao. I drove my car to Santa Rita Jail, and on the way I couldn't help but think that this collage of images will with a blink evaporate. In just a year, this pale facade will pixelate, memory fail to bind the dots. This pool will slowly sink into a vat, a dead computer link, no longer needed, undelivered mail. What will remain is what I'm feeling now. The rising and falling of my chest, the hum that's undefined inside my ear, perhaps a drop of thankfulness. The Tao repeats, count syllables, which beat is stressed. It's not the words, it's what you hear. And at least from the book, I'll finish with another sonnet. That was a sonnet. And this is sort of appropriate being in San Rafael, because anyway, I went to I think the last execution they had in California, and this poem is based upon that. It was triggered by hearing over the radio that Troy Davis had been executed. That was in Georgia some time ago, I know. But anyway, this is a sonnet about that. It's San Quentin, at least the first 8 lines is about hearing about Troy Davis. The last 6 lines is about being outside of San Quentin before the execution. When I heard about Troy Davis, distract myself or meditate to divide my life into impermeable zones, to keep me from questioning when I'm alone. What the radio report repeats, he died. It was a shock, as though a friend had died, as though I were waiting by the phone to hear the news I've known would come, but pretended wouldn't. I've tried. Outside the wall, a Klieg, a talking head in ghastly light, a skeleton on stilts collect. A frazzled prison guard complains to dreadlocked kids who trample on his bed of bulbs. A battle group of nuns tilt into the crowd the barricade restrains. All right. So now I'm going to read a few new poems in totally different style. And I'll see, how long have I been going? I don't know. Maybe 10 minutes. All right. I'll read a few more of these. So these are very different, and here we go. Guano. Guano fell from the shit tree's dense green canopy on my way to have a spirulina smoothie. Splattered the sidewalk, a Jackson Pollock white shit canvas. The concrete dense layered with pigment built up with drip after meticulous drip. So many birds shit from this tree, I didn't know so many birds had died. Hidden in the branches, you couldn't see them, could sometimes hear them rustling, but who's going to stand under a shit tree and listen? It literally coats the ground, like some asshole stood there and splattered the pavement out of a paint can. Why did I walk under the shit tree? What did I think? I could beat the odds? But I did. What choice did I have? Could I really admit to myself that I would never walk under the shit tree, that I would allow it to alter my course? The shit split out of the corner of my eye like one of those time-lapse cameras in reverse. Slow-mo plaster of Paris raindrop. As it blinked next to my shoulder, I said to myself, like, did I just have a stroke or something? You don't believe it's happened. I dodged it, made a little basketball fake to the right. There's no dodging a stroke, and there's no dodging shit. It happens too fast. You can lie to yourself all you want, think the special effects master can edit the shit out. But when I got to the other side, there it was, splatter drops on the shoulder, down the sleeve of my blue blazer, over the brass buttons like cottage cheese, like a nosebleed, and not a napkin in sight. I grabbed the newspaper out of my man purse and started to wipe. It came right out. Magic newspaper, disappeared into the print, but still the thought of it, still with me, as I sipped my smoothie in the hipster health food bar with my shit jacket on, hunched up in one of their masticated easy chairs, velvet vomit green bile, the shit cushion like a used condom, a cover with the cushion compressed. How many shit suits had sat there, examining their fingers? The thought of invisible shit on my hands, like rancid bacon, like an OCD Lady Macbeth, out damned blotch. Why didn't I wash my hands? Why didn't I bring the antibiotic disinfectant? Wasn't till later, back in my office, I saw the papers plopping in the duct-taped plastic tray, something from the fax, blurry, botched print smeared on a report from the 70s. Rubbing my thumb on the victim's statement, feeling for my forefinger in a tong-like grip. On my way back to my desk, I caught myself in the mirror to the left of the metal horizontal filing cabinet that I often look into and noticed something white. White, that's right. I took off my jacket and there was a splotch on my left shoulder, big as a goose egg, ready to hatch.
At least you didn't look up.
All right. I don't know how long that took. Time stopped, right? All right, here's one more I'll do. Zombies. It's also sort of long. Another transitioning out of work poem. All right. My life is like the olive tree in my front yard. Bushy and unkempt, untrimmed, it blocks off the view to the front of the house, and I don't know what to do about it. I could write a poem about my parking garage, for instance, how when I get out of my car to go to work for another fucking day, that there are all these women standing next to the elevator on the 7th floor in their white running shoes, tucked into their stupid stockings, and they're all carrying oversized bags filled with high heels and other items that I'm not privy to, and we smile and exchange glances, and I begin to be friendly to everyone in this false, fakey, flaky way, and offer them the door when I don't really care about the door, or them. And how I let them go to the back of the elevator when I really don't want them to go to the back. I want to go to the back of the fucking elevator and stare at them. Instead, I'm looking at the door and waiting for the elevator to descend. But it doesn't, because someone else has arrived. And the door is half closed, and then it opens up, and this person stands in front of me. And I have to angle myself back so as not to touch this person. And I bump into the person behind me, and so it goes, spinning myself around at the front of the elevator, the first of many indignities. On my way to the metal detector, I'm walking through this concrete tunnel with all the other workers in a kind of zombie step, blop, 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 feeling in my pocket for my ID card because everybody's got to have an ID card. And I have to show my ID card because they're afraid that I might be carrying a weapon or because that's the rule. So I have to have this ID card in my pocket every morning, ready to flash. And I hold the ID card for the deputy, make sure I don't cover up my face so he can see my face, and I smile while I'm trying to get his attention, like I try to get the attention of a bartender in a bar, Of course, a bar. Where else would a bartender be? Perhaps at the racetrack, at Golden Gate Fields, or the grocery store, or anywhere else. But in my poem, this bartender is in a bar. And I still can't get his attention because I never learned how to get the attention of bartenders. It's a problem I have. I'm too passive. I never developed the insouciance, I think that's what you call it, to command the attention of the fucking bartender who just looks right past me, even though I have this feeling, and I think I'm going to cry now, because I have been afflicted with this problem my entire life. So yes, here I am, in line with the metal detectors. I hate zombies and zombie movies. I hate how they have intruded into my mind at this very moment, and I'm writing about them and nothing else. And how when I get home, I won't be thinking about anything else except how I can turn on the TV and watch anything but the news, of course. I was talking about the olive tree that needs to be trimmed and is blocking the view out of the front window of my house. As I sit on the sofa in the front window of my house, looking for something new to do, except for looking out of the front window of my house, I guess I'll go watch some TV. Thank you.